mix it up a little bit. You can do a chartreuse pattern crankbait like this. So this is a chartreuse blueback, okay? That white splatter size with black back, those are my standard go-to colored crankbaits for the springtime. Doesn't matter what company you use, these two colors will catch a fish in every lake in the state in the springtime. Yes, a lot of people will throw a crayfish pattern crankbait. A lot of people throw perch colored crankbaits, sunfish colored crankbaits. When they're feeding actively prior to spawn, it doesn't really matter what color you're throwing. You're going to get bit. They're going to eat. They're going to fill themselves up. They're going to be fat and happy and ready to spawn. All right. So that 55 to 65, just about any bait goes. You can start fishing your jigs with, your football jigs, your flipping jigs, Texas rig creature baits, big things. You want to learn how to use a specific lure for the summertime, 55 to 65 degree range, that's your time to teach yourself how to do something. This is when the fish aren't very picky. This is when the fish are very, very active. This is when they're going to eat whatever they can find and fit in their mouth, especially in New York State. Other states, they tend to vary a little bit, but New York State, this is what I found over my 20-plus years of being an actual bass fisherman specifically. I've been fishing, like I said before, bass tournaments for over 15 years, and I do guide for these little critters as well. So, at that point, once you reach that 65-degree water temperature, things start happening. Does anybody know what the water temperature is for spawning? Anybody tell me? There's a prize here for answering a question. Take a guess. Just take a guess.
50 degrees.
75.
No. But for playing the game, you both get a hat.
66 degrees.
You're about as close as anybody. It's actually 65 is the magic temperature. All right.
So I live in Branchport, and I've been fishing streamers for smallmouth bass in the spring for many years.
Correct.
It's a technique I learned from a local guy. And when the surface temperature hit 66 degrees, before the alewife crash, when the surface temperature hit 66 degrees, go do something else.
When that surface temperature
For that
is
technique.
66 degrees for smallmouth, and you want specifically fly fish,
Yeah.
get on the bank and look for dock pilings that are submerged. Like Canisius Lake, for example, there's a lot of cinder blocks in the lake.
Yeah.
People use them to hold their docks down. The smallmouth literally get right on top of them or next to them and spawn. And at that point, now you're sight fishing. That's actually even more fun. New York State does have a law that allows you to target bass out of state, or not out of state, out of season, artificial lures only.
Yeah.
So you can target them. If you pull them off a nest, they're going to go right back to it. And there's many studies done. A lot of the southern states run tournaments during the spawn. They'll pull fish out of their nest, tag them, and they'll be back in their nest the next day. They'll swim 20 miles sometimes to get back to where they're spawning. So there doesn't really hinder the population like a lot of people think. So it's not a bad thing to fish for them during the spawn. It's actually somebody competitive like me. It gives me the advantage to study them, to figure out what they're doing. So when I go somewhere else for a tournament, I have a better idea of how to function in that environment. So your world, Branchport, that's the deep end of Keuka Lake in the north end. Penn Yan side's a lot shallower than the Branchport side is. There's that big rock bar just north at the north end there in front of the marina. They'll get on that, but get back inside that marina, get back in on the bank, the docks and the corners back there, all the bass get up in there. You come down the bank a little bit further on the west shores, nice docks, nice weed lines, nice shoreline that's got gravel. That's where those smallmouth are going to get up on top of the spawn. The direct north end of Branchport. So when that water's warm like that, they're still there.
Yeah.
You just got to visually see them and actually sight fish for them. And when you're sight fishing, white zonker strips, flies, things like that, so you can actually physically see the bait, or a crayfish pattern, bunny leech pattern, big giant woolly buggers, something that will imitate something that they're aggressive towards. Biggest thing I found when you're bed fishing is I go two total opposites. I either go real finesse and I throw a tube jig in there, or I go way off the wall, total.
Piss them off.
Exactly. Like I'll take a white rubber buzz toad, Gambler King toad, Stanley ribbit. It's a rubber frog that sinks. It's not a topwater. You actually thread a hook into it. I'll put that on a jig head and I'll throw it in the bed.
So you're saying those fish are spawning after the temperature gets up to about
Once that temperature stabilizes at like 65 degrees for like a day or two, they initially go into the spawn.
Okay.
They're not all going to spawn at the same time, so especially Keuka Lake, you've got shallow areas, deep areas, some fish that don't migrate to the shallow spawning flats. So you got fish spawning in May, and then south in the lake, you might have fish spawning in the beginning of June. So that spawn, post-spawn, pre-spawn, you can almost stage that throughout the lake. So the north end of the lake, and beginning of May is pre-spawn. End of May is spawn. Center of the lake, you're still somewhat pre-spawn. Some of those big smallmouth that aren't going to migrate, they're just going straight to the bank. They're starting to feed. All right. South end of the lake is still pre-spawn. So you can almost pattern that all the way through the lake, especially the bigger, deeper finger lakes.